You're listening to Common Sense Radio on the Lanterns Media Network. I'm AJ Davis.
And I'm Susan Swift. We're kind of like Diamond and Silk, except think bulldog and lipstick.
And we want to wish you a Merry Christmas.
And a Happy New Year.
Oh, come let us adore Him, Christ the Lord. Oh, come all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. Oh, come ye to Bethlehem.
Welcome to the program, folks. So glad to have you here on Monday. And as I promised you last week, we have the wonderful Susan Swift who will be joining the program. How are you doing, Susan?
I am blessed and highly favored, AJ, and I am so glad to be with you.
I am so glad to be here with you as well. Could you go ahead and just, I wanted to save the reveal about you from the horse's mouth. I'm not calling you a horse, but you get the saying.
Frau Bruja.
Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Oh, goodness gracious. I am a mother. I'm a lawyer. I've got 7 kids. Yes, I had them all one at a time, and I am still married to the husband, so I'm stubborn. But I guess the things that they probably want to know more about me is I started out as an actor. I was a child actor for many years, and then I went to law school. I became a lawyer and worked at a downtown LA law type firm. And then in 2009, while I was raising these 7 children, I called into the Rush Limbaugh show because I was so upset at what was going on with the Obamacare vote at the time. I was really upset that Obamacare was being jammed down our throats. So I just called in as a caller to Rush Limbaugh and was articulate and passionate enough, and he let me just go. He just got out of the way and let me go, and it kind of became the Susan and Glendale show for about 3 segments worth. And what happened at that time was that Andrew Breitbart was happening to be listening to the Rush Limbaugh show, and he heard me going on, and he said, "That's news right there, what's happening live. I want to find her." So he, his people, I guess, started hunting me down, found me, invited me to come on to what was called then the Breitbart B cast. It was a show, a short-lived show, and I guess they were vetting me there, so I did a little stint there with them. And they liked me so much that then they asked me to start writing for his then very, very young big journalism. He had, big government, big journalism, big Hollywood, and the big sites eventually became Breitbart, which is now Breitbart 2.0. And so I worked there writing for him up through until, I guess, his death and afterwards when Steve Bannon took over and, started changing it and really turning it into much more of a news and less of a commentary type of a organization, and things just kind of progressed from there. And so I just continue to add my little small political voice as I see it, and I'm just one conservative mother.
I love it. I love it. Andrew Breitbart was one of my favorite political activists. I just thought he was sharp. He was smart. He could articulate the message like nobody else. And I was so sad when he passed away.
Yes, and he would go outside the box. He would go outside the box and go on the attack and on the offense to get at the Democrats and to shake them up. And he was brilliant that way. See, he had been, a liberal, an indoctrinated liberal forever, and he finally, he converted later, and he really called them the media complex, the liberal, media complex, and was really trying very hard to expose the entire mindset of the ideologues, I should say, in Democrats. As he says, most voters, most people, they are default Democrats because that's the way that the media is kind of pre-programming and feeding us up until the new media revolution really started with the internet. There really wasn't anything other than C-SPAN, right? There was the Rush Limbaugh radio show.
Gosh,
and
I love C-SPAN.
Yes, and that was it. That was the only answer to the three mega ABC, NBC, and CBS News. Walter Cronkite, all of that. That was what was running our information world. And then gradually, of course, the cracks started showing. And then with the internet, then new media started coming. And of course, Breitbart was one of them, and is now one of the fairly major players. And because of that, all of us now have many more sources for news, and we start seeing, whether it's truth or not, at least we're getting this would be the term, alternate facts, right? That would be, right? We're getting more facts than we were allowed before, because the rulers of the media,
the elite
class, they can't control the message. I like to call the media, by the way, because Rush had a term which is, the drive-by media, and I really wrestled and wrangled with that for a good week or so, and then I came up with my own term to try to describe the liberal media. I call them the make-believe media, because there's make the news and then they make you believe it. That's the make-believe media is, the mainstream media.
Ooh,
Just
that sounds like a catchy hashtag almost.
You like that? It is. It's a hashtag.
I love it.
Hashtag make-believe media.
Hey, folks, if you want to engage with us throughout the week, we'll use the hashtag Common Sense Radio. I will tweet out links to this broadcast, and I tried to retweet all the other Lanterneers at lanterns.buzz. I told you would love Susan. She's 10 times smarter than me. She can articulate things about 100 times better than me. Like I told you, she's fantastic. So what we're going to do tonight, we're going to cover the Roy Moore situation down in Alabama. We're going to start we're going to start out with a little bit of the news from the Huffington Post, and how Speaker Ryan is silently talking about making deals behind closed doors with the Democrats, the Socialists, the three wings of the Democratic Party about DACA. And
so business as usual from the GOP. Oh gosh,
Susan, don't tell them that. Shh. Remember, we needed the House, we needed the Senate, and then the presidency, and we're a year in, and we're going to get stuff done. Maybe
right. That's right. We're going to get so much stuff done. All the stuffs. We are going to get all the stuffs done. You just wait and see.
I just had a brilliant idea, and I wonder if we should start a GoFundMe page for new watches for Congress, because they just don't seem to be able to tell the time. I wonder if their watches are stuck kind of like Orrin Hatch back in the 60s.
Yeah. They know exactly what time it is. They know precisely the time, and they are running. This is like football, which the NFL. Look, everybody, you should watch as much NFL as you want to, because I tell you, it's going away, because they're committing hara-kiri. They are falling on the flag, if you will. They're killing themselves. But the GOP knows exactly what time it is, and they are in a battle for their very lives, because they are the swamp. They are the establishment. The GOP establishment side. There are some more conservative. We know the conservative wing. We know who they are, and they have been attempting to reclaim our country from the establishment. And don't think for a minute that the establishment is only on the Democrat side of the aisle, or that the establishment is just the Obama operatives in the State Department or something. No. These are GOP operatives just as well, and they know darn well that this is the fourth quarter and that we've got about 5 more minutes on the clock. They know it, and they are trying to run the clock out. That's the football analogy there. That's what they're trying to do, because they want to control power. They want it as is. All they really want. They want to switch from. They got their switch from the Democrats being in charge with Trump's election. McConnell thought that he was going to be able to control, or at least bottle up, Trump, and that he
good
was
luck
dismayed.
on that.
He would have rather have had anybody.
Oh,
but
he would
Trump,
love to have Jeb Bush in there.
Yeah, he wanted Bush, and when it came down to Ted Cruz or Trump, I think they were really upset with both, and then I guess they thought, well, I guess we can work more easily with Trump
because
than
he's
with
a deal
Ted
maker.
Cruz. Yes, he is, and he's a businessman, and he'll make the deals, whereas Ted Cruz might not have. And it's a toss up to say whether now Ted Cruz could have put up with the dirty dealings of, Hillary et al. So it doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, Mitch McConnell thought he'd be able to control Trump and is now trying to stall all of the Trump agenda.
Oh, absolutely. But he is all over Twitter talking about how wonderful the judicial appointments are going to be.
Well, I tell you, my daddy would always tell me that the one reason, if at the very end of the day you can't stand either of the presidential candidates, you have to vote for the Republican. In our time, at least, it's the more conservative that tends to be Republican, right?
Yeah, and it's amazing to me because I don't know about you, but for me, when I'm looking at after first term congressmen or women, I'm looking at, did they vote for Speaker Ryan? Did they vote for Leader McConnell? Because that's how I'm starting to judge them. The ones that are not scared of politics, they'll vote their conscience. They'll vote who they believe is truly in their best interest, not just the best interest for the party. And that's why I thought it was. I try to read the Huffington Post. I try to read Mother Jones, all those progressive sites. And the thing that
what are you, a masochist?
No, I like reading. I'm boring. Like I've stated in previous broadcasts, I go on my breaks at work and lunch, and sometimes just read the city council meeting notes from the local area, just because I like to stay informed.
So we don't have to. There you go, because that'll kill us.
Oh,
but you're good.
And that's one thing we should, in the future, talk about more local issues. I think a lot of issues that we can control more is at the local issue. The federal level, we can call and email, tweet. I mean, the invention of the internet has really made people like Speaker Ryan scared to death. And when he sees an article that is titled, "Paul Ryan tells conservatives DACA will be part of spending deal," that makes my head want to explode.
Right. But the way to do this, we have to do what was successful back in, no, it's not Kemp. It's Speaker of the House Gingrich. He did something phenomenal back then in, I guess, the 80s or so, which is he nationalized local elections for Congress. He nationalized the congressional elections, because usually you and I, we're going out and we're voting for a congressman based on, well, is he going to represent our district? And Gingrich was successful in making this, the Contract with America back in the day, a national phenomenon, so that people would say, well, I need to send somebody who will represent not just my local issues, but also nationally what's important. And that is something that I think we've seen that phenomenon happen again with the uprising of the Tea Party.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
So many Americans were all, and it's kind of like we don't have a hive mentality, but we're all thinking along the same lines independently, and it is bubbling up. It is organic. It is grassroots. That's why the Democrats hate it, because that's what they want. They astroturf these type of events.
Oh yeah,
what
absolutely.
We do is there's so many people who are frustrated with Washington right now. We're not happy with it at all, and this is why Trump was able to ride the wave of dissatisfaction, because there's nobody more hated in America than perhaps Congress and the Senate.
It's absolutely true.
Your plumber. You'll almost even trust lawyers more than you'll trust politicians, right?
Almost, and even car salesmen.
Exactly, and they don't. I guess, but the GOP, I guess they understand it, but they just don't care. And what they're trying to do is now run out the clock, and just hoping that, well, what people will forget, if we can just delay this, all we need is in 2018, we need to get a couple more, good old boys in there. I don't know what they're thinking, because if they don't, if
they're do nothing Congress Senate, right now,
they're going to be replaced.
They are.
They will be replaced, and the only question is whether enough Americans are going to primary these do-nothing Republican senators in the toss-up type states, so that, say, like McConnell,
Matt Bevin really gave him a run for his money.
Exactly. What we have to do a lot more of that, and replace some of these establishment types. That's going to be critical. Otherwise, the Trump reformation, if you will, the reformation of the American federal, government is going to fall flat, and I don't think Trump will be blamed with it. I don't think they will.
Oh no, I don't think so either.
The diehard Trumpists will stick by him, and I've never been a never Trumper because I'm a practical woman. Let's put it this way. I would have much rather have had, Walker. Walker was my first choice in the primaries. And then, of course, Cruz, I was very, very happy with Cruz. And, okay, I didn't get my first, choices. All right. Trump was not, one of my first choices.
Yeah, Paul and Cruz were mine, too.
Yeah, but, okay, I got two reasons why I voted for Trump. You want them? Ready?
Do I have a choice?
No, you don't. Here it is.
Okay, go ahead then.
my two reasons why I voted for Donald Trump for president are, in this order, Hillary Clinton. There you go.
Well,
one and
there
two.
Should have been there should have been two more. Supreme Court.
That's what my daddy always said. You always have to vote for the Republican / the constitutional candidate because he appoints judges and he's doing a phenomenal job.
Yeah, Neil Gorsuch was amazing.
The only thing he does. Oh yes, but even down ballot, basically on the district court
circuit,
levels, and that will save this country because that is what the Democrats have been doing. They've been stacking the court.
They knew what they were doing.
Yeah, because you know what? Every time, what Democrat they can't typically win at the ballot box, and so what do? They bring a lawsuit, and then they go in front of their hand-picked judge, and they're careful. They bring it in a district like look what just happened with this. Remember the travel ban? Well, where did they bring the lawsuit, the federal lawsuit?
Wasn't it from Hawaii? Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, because they had a radical, left-wing district court judge there who was going to rubber stamp whatever they do. They pick their jurisdictions and they go there. Well, that's because they know that they've stacked the courts with, and these are lifetime appointments, these judges.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they know you don't have to tell them what to do because they've already drunk the Kool-Aid, all right? They are Democrat ideologue, liberal loyalists who want to limit the Constitution. They don't want the Constitution to limit the government. The government, want to limit the Constitution. So any one of these Democrat judges, they will do it. You don't even have to ask. And I read a report. I don't have it in front of me. I'm so sorry. But where Trump had there were 12, I believe it. I don't have it in front of me. 12 Islamic judges. There were 12 Muslim judges, apparently, on the federal bench somewhere. And he simply just said, well, you know what? You're all out of a job. I'm going to take away those seats from you. Now, they're still all paid. He can't fire them, but he can take away their court so that they can't rule.
Wow.
That's just...
Yeah, you have to find that and send that to me for sure.
That's
we should talk about that one time. When you find that article, we should talk about that.
I will find it.
Yeah, definitely. Let's go ahead and take a break right now. I can't look how much fun we're having tonight, Susan.
Yeah.
We were just having too much fun. Okay, so you're listening to Common Sense Radio on the Lanterns Radio Network.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
In every rising of the sun, my purpose was to be thankful to be alive. I was even more thankful for the blessings that came with this life, specifically Virdis, my wife. But that came to an end when Aklavane and her minions violently took her away from me. So my new purpose in this life is to gather all the pieces of the Stonesheart so I can defeat Aklavane and get back my bride. Join me as I travel to new worlds, making new friends and avoiding old enemies. Read more about my story in the first 2 books of the Stonesheart series, which are now available on Amazon.com in Kindle format. The first book is The Quest for Savitvarda, and that is followed by The Heart of Pagaila. Stonesheart is more than a fantasy and a sci-fi quest. It's me fighting to get back my precious wife, despite the overwhelming odds against me. Stonesheart. Join, explore, and believe.
Welcome to the program, folks. You're listening to Common Sense Radio on the Lanterns Radio Network. And I have a treat for you today. I have the chance to interview State Rep Julie Parrish from Oregon House District 37. How are you, Representative Parrish?
I'm well, thank you.
So I wanted to bring you on because you have been a fierce advocate against the Senate bill that was the health care tax to health insurance. And you have the Stop Healthcare Taxes Referendum 301. And if we have time, we could talk a little budget, House Bill 3391 and PERS, if you're able. But can you tell me and the listeners about when the special election is and more about this referendum and why it's a bad thing for the state of Oregon?
So it was a House Bill 2391, that the goal was to fund Medicaid. And, I tell folks, if our goal was to somehow undo Medicaid or kick 350,000 people off of their health care that the state funds, we would have referred the entire bill to the voters. The fact is we left hundreds of millions of operable dollars that have now actually become law under House Bill 2391, and we only pulled out the parts that are really egregious. We were able to gather 90,000 signatures. We turned in almost 85,000 of those. Turn the signatures in and qualified for the ballot. And now the election will be on January 23rd, and it's Measure 101, and we're urging voters to vote no. Because a yes vote upholds the tax increases that the legislature just passed, and the no vote says, no, we don't want a sales tax on our health care. So we pulled out 4 pieces of tax policy in the bigger bill, and then a piece of more philosophical policy around whether or not insurance companies should be able to pass the tax directly onto the ratepayer. So there's a tax on PEB, which is the public employee benefit plans, that really was just money that got sucked out of the general fund. We said, nope, we're not interested in that. Let's let voters vote on that. There's a tax on insurance premiums, and who's paying those premiums? It's about 217,000 Oregonians who buy their own health care inside or outside of the exchange. They don't have an employer to pay for it. They may or may not qualify for a tax subsidy under the Affordable Care Act. In fact, only 41% of those 217,000 even do. It's about 12,000 college students who have to have a plan because they live on our campuses. There are about 15,500 small group employers. They're not all for-profit businesses, mind you. They're the local Head Start in your community, or even your church. If the church buys health care for the pastor and their family and other church employees, they're in that small group market. They're subject to this tax. Then there are large group employers who have more than 50 employees. The biggest purchaser of health care inside the large group market is actually our public schools. So it will collectively take $25 million in a form of a tax out of our K-12 school budgets. We found that absolutely objectionable. While big corporations, unions, and insurance companies, because they self-insure, they were not included in the bill. Legally, they could have been, but we didn't include them. So we're asking half the state to pick up the tab on Medicaid, and the state the half that's arguably struggling to pay their own bills, while we left out the other half that could pay help pay those bills, and gave them a free pass. And so we just found that the tax was horribly unfair. And then the Section 8 of the bill says, well, we'll let insurance companies pass that tax on. So it's not even a tax on insurance companies. Many of Oregon's insurance companies that just this month posted very large profits to their bottom line, even as they're pulling out of communities and creating these insurance monopolies where you only have one choice in your community anymore for 15 counties where Regents Insurance, for example, just pulled out of the market. There's 2 other tax components. One's very complicated, but it's a tax on the Medicaid providers themselves. And then the other is a tax on the net revenues of some of the larger hospitals in the state. And that's only going to drive up hospital costs. And so we find that all objectionable and have said, we just think voters should vote. And so we're giving them the chance, and we're asking them to vote no in January.
I completely agree with you, and I'll be voting no 100% along with my brother-in-law works for a small company in Newburgh, and their insurance rates since the Affordable Care Act has just skyrocketed.
It's insane.
I'm sorry?
It's insane. We've talked to people who've, small businesses and their small group is like 7 people, and they've seen a 73% rate increase. It's not affordable.
No, not at all. And it's just something that's the danger of tax of. I don't know if you feel this way, but sometimes an overreaching government trying to suck every dollar that it can to spend on things that are not necessary.
Well, because of course the way to make healthcare cheaper is to tax it, right? I mean, that's their philosophy. And I hope that Oregon voters sort of see through that shenanigans. It's troubling when you have the headlines that we have right now. All right, all the waste and fraud in the Medicaid system, the millions of dollars of overpayments. It's just this mess. And it's like, yet taxpayers are being treated like an ATM machine. Just give us more money so we can clean up the messes we made, and we'll sweep these messes under the rug until the next mess comes along. And I just don't think it's fair. And, people are like, oh, you're going to throw these folks off health care. My own nephew's on the Oregon Health Plan. Dr. Hayden is a dentist who provides services to low-income health care, and he runs a charitable health nonprofit that provides free health care to people. And he spends a lot of time in his own personal resources to do that. And so, we're trying to actually make sure that every dollar that goes in for Medicaid, if you're truly eligible and qualified for it, that you actually make sure it gets to the people who it's supposed to serve, not these Medicaid profiteers who put millions of dollars into politics with our own tax dollars being spent against us, who have, created huge net worth inside these for-profit Medicaid organizations, so much so that one of these Medicaid organizations actually created so much equity in their company with our tax dollars that they sold to an out-of-state corporation for $130 million. We're just like, we want reform, and we want to make sure that every dollar we spend on healthcare gets to a needy patient who needs it.
It just sounds common sense to me. It really does.
Well, I'm hoping voters, believe that, and that they or take the time to get engaged and learn about this. Because, of course, we're having a January election. Normally this election would have been in November. And so we're running around the state right now trying to talk to as many, League of Women voter groups and editorial boards. But it's a very compressed election season over a holiday. You've got Christmas and New Year's and everything else in between sort of stacked in here. And so the yes for healthcare taxes side, they are going to spend $2 million. A lot of it is our own Medicaid dollars to try to get you to vote yes. We're sort of the little engine that could campaign, and we just kind of keep chugging and puffing up the mountainside. And, and we're just talking to voters. We're out trying to talk to as many voters as we can because your ballot's actually going to land in your mailbox right after New Year's Day. And so if you're traveling this year, we want you to make sure you go to your county offices and get an absentee ballot. You don't want to miss this election. Because really, I've got colleagues who are in that, healthcare is a basic human right. Okay, if healthcare is a basic human right, why the heck are we taxing it? I mean, it's just like, to me, it's like taxing food or taxing, water or taxing, kind of those life necessities that we all need. And yet my colleagues have no problem doing it. And we have a legal opinion that says that, basically, especially if we've overfunded Medicaid, anything that we have over budgeted and overfunded, you can sweep those dollars and use them on anything else. And so we really are disturbed by the fact that our healthcare dollars for the first time ever are now out of the lockbox and freed up to pay for PERS or pay for, solar panels on people's swimming pools or whatever nonsense the legislature spends money on. And that's a real line item expenditure, solar panel for swimming pools. Don't
really?
laugh.
Where is that at?
The tax credit. I'm like, if you can afford a swimming pool and a solar panel to put on it, you certainly don't need my tax credit to help pay for it. So, that's our frustration. I mean, we're just common sense folks out there trying to help people understand taxing healthcare won't save the system, and it's super complicated, and we get it. And it's hard to, pick up and really learn about it in the 25 days or whatever before ballots are out. But we want voters to feel like they can go on our Facebook page at Stop Healthcare Taxes and, come and get us questions asked and answered. They can call us. My phone number is published in the voters pamphlet. I actually want people to feel like they can pick up the phone, call me, get me directly. It's 503-432-9707. That's my personal cell. I'm giving it out to anybody who wants to
Wow.
get truly informed about this, because I'm one of the only people in the legislature, in the House side, who still remembers the very beginning conversations of implementing the ACA. I was on that committee that year, and I've watched us systematically, whether you believe in the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, whether or not you like that plan, we have broken that plan in this state. $300 million on Cover Oregon, $300 more million on new software. The state agency wants $88 more million on software, hundreds of millions of dollars of overpayments because we had a backlog for eligibility, more millions of dollars on just, mismanagement overall, and then you want a tax on top of it. It's just enough's enough.
Absolutely. And just looking at your website, the Stop Healthcare Taxes, is that .com?
Yep.
I mean, you got almost 90,000 people in 90 days. I think that was incredible. And it was very informative. So then I had, okay, so if this bill goes down, what's the next step? I saw that you had 3 alternative bills that you were the chief sponsor of.
Yep.
Which one do you think is best for Oregonians? I personally like House Bill 3130, and I work for the public schools. I mean, it's just, it's something I personally think is the best one. But I wanted to see, since you know the nitty-gritty of each bill, which one do you think is best for Oregonians?
So the 3130, that's the exchange bill, right?
Correct.
Put public employees in exchange. So that's the one I've actually brought back personally for the short legislative session. And I like that more than putting public employees into coordinated care organizations, which, by the way, is actually already the law. We passed a law in 2011 that said that once we created coordinated care model for people in need on Medicaid, that we would actually do that same thing for people in the public sector. And, Governor Kitzhaber believed that would save $1 billion. I believe putting people in the exchange saves us $1 billion. I like the 3130 and whatever number, it'll get a new number in February. I like that best because it then actually aligns us with the Affordable Care Act. It says, okay, here's what the Affordable Care Act thinks is, fair compensation for health care. Because understand, in the Affordable Care Act, there's also this Cadillac tax. It's coming in the next biennium. And essentially what that is anything we pay for health care more than what the federal government says is, fair, is going to be subject to a 40% tax. That is, every public employer in the state of Oregon is going to get whacked with that tax. And it'll just be millions and millions of dollars that are sucked out of Oregon's budgets back to the federal government, and we'll never see that money back. So I like this bill, largely the idea of putting public employees into the exchange. I used to work for a school district. I ran the school lunch program, and I had women who served lunch who, really just was working in the school district to buy the insurance. From an income perspective, they would qualify if we put them into the ACA. They'd qualify for those federal tax breaks. And so, you could save your local school district some dollars that way. You'd bring down the overall cost of the health care. You would put more lives into the exchange to balance out the risk pool so that everyday Oregonians who do not have an employer and who are out buying their own health care would actually get better rates that way without an expensive insurance company giveaway called a reinsurance program. And then you essentially save in a biennium about $1 billion in overall health care costs. Those are real dollars that the way the bill's written, you could you would be required to put half of that money aside for when healthcare costs in the ACA roll up and the value of the plans roll up. Then you just roll that up too, and you'd have a bucket of money to pay that. The other half of the savings from what we're currently paying for healthcare, the way that 3131 bill is designed, would be to go for other employee-related costs, which could include PERS payments and buying down the PERS liability costs with that, and essentially get through that generational PERS issue of that very expensive Tier 1 type plan that we know we've got 20 to 30 years left of that liability. And the way I think you do it is you balance out the budget through making changes in the public employee healthcare cost side. If you reduce the cost of and pressure on budgets, you free up money for Medicaid. So it's use this savings to solve some budget issues on the public employer side, frees up general fund to keep paying for Medicaid.
Awesome. That $1 billion would tremendously help with the PERS and the budget hole, because I remember you guys going into the legislative session, and a lot of people were disappointed that there was, especially on the Republican side, that there was no solution for PERS. And alone, some of the school districts were taking $15 million hits this year and looking like almost every year it's going to increase. What do you see the future solution for PERS is with the legislature?
Well, we get 2 bills in the short session. So I have one very complicated healthcare bill. I have one very complicated PERS bill.
You are putting their feet to the fire, and I love it.
Well, you know what? I'm sensitive to the whole issue around public retirements and public health care. You know, my husband was in the military. He gets a pension from the federal government. You know, we have TRICARE, which isn't the best insurance in the world, but we're grateful to have it. You can't be the head of OHSU and get a $66,000 a month PERS payment for life. A month. $66,666 PERS payment per month. And, you know, it takes just to generate that kind of payout every month, you need to have at least $20 to $25 million going full tilt in the, investments just to make his payment for one person. So, you know, we need some PERS capping. We can do that. We need to get out from under sort of the defined benefit piece and move more over to a defined contribution and bump those contributions up. But, you know, if you can start buying down the PERS unfunded liability over time, you can actually put more money into people's retirement accounts. I think you also need to start giving people flexibility with their dollars. You know, the healthcare bill that I have also says, look, you know, we'll give you as an employee, we'll give you a defined amount of money that if you already have healthcare, say through your spouse. Maybe you should be using that in a pre-tax account for daycare. Maybe you should be using that to pay down your student loans. Maybe you could use it to, you know, put more money in your own retirement account instead of saying, well, we're only going to spend this money and you're locked into having it for healthcare. When I worked in the school district and my husband had insurance, I'd rather would have had money for daycare. I had 3 kids in daycare. So, you know, if we can free up and rethink those benefits to help them be more customized to what somebody actually needs in their life, I think that also finds us ways to have savings. So they're complex bills, but I also believe both bills are totally legal. So, you know, we always hear with PERS, you can't make changes to PERS because of the, you know, sort of constitution issue around a contract is a contract. And I think for the large part that's true, but there are things we actually can do that I think are legal that we can take us moving forward and then take some pressure off of the PERS system. You know, if you got out of PERS, if you're the Senate, minority leader and you get out of PERS, you worked for PERS, you know, for 6.5 years in the 70s or 80s, and you come back in and you're still, you know, 20 years later and you're still tier 1, that doesn't make any sense. You had all this gap in the private sector. You know, if you moved from Nike to Intel, you wouldn't get to have that kind of, guaranteed commitment. So, you know, we believe that if you, the contract should be to the organization who hired you. If I worked for the Westland-Wilsonville School District, which I did, my PERS doesn't automatically or shouldn't automatically translate, 10 years later to the legislature. It's a different job. It's a different contract. And so we think that there's just some things we can do that are common sense, that help bring down those costs and that make the process more thoughtful and honor the public employees with a fair retirement. But, $66,666 a month is not fair.
No, not at all. And I agree with you. And is Governor Brown working with the legislator right now to come up with some common sense bills? I mean, she was doing her state tour with House Bill 3391, which was the landmark $10.2 million bill, puts insurers, taxpayers on the hook for abortion copays and deductibles. Is she doing anything about PERS or the budget or anything like that?
No, I'm sorry. I really wanted to come in and like Kate Brown, the first day she was sworn in, I, went and had given her like a little, welcome gift. And, I was like, I really am hopeful. I'm crossing my fingers. And, she's making me nostalgic for John Kitzhaber, and that's a problem.
Wow.
So, because at least Kitzhaber was willing to get in and kind of roll up his sleeves and fight for a deal and fight for some compromise. And we didn't always love everything he was doing. But you could at least, kind of come to some conclusion that Governor Kitzhaber was actually trying to bend cost curves. And Governor Brown is just out spending money like a drunken sailor. And so whether it's $10 million for mandatory abortion, $55 million for Cover All Kids, $100 million for raises for SCIU. I mean, you said it earlier in the interview, we came in and there was this big budget hole. Okay, well then let's not do any new spending. But we did hundreds of millions of dollars of new spending. And our concern is, going back to the, Measure 101, you created a mechanism whereby you could take taxes out of the healthcare and use it for those non-Medicaid expenditures. And that's what we're really mad about, is that they created a backdoor way to fund pet projects like this, and they're putting it on the backs of our healthcare dollars.
I just find it atrocious. And I thank you for the hard work you're doing down in the legislature. Is there anything? Actually, one last thing. Are there big dollars behind your no on 101? And are they giving you guys big problems, like any threats or anything like that?
Well, so there's big dollars behind the yes on 101.
I mean the yes. I'm sorry, not the no. I'm yes. I apologize.
No
I got that.
101.
Yeah, no on 101. Everyone, we want you to vote no, not yes. No.
Vote no, and we are, we've largely self-funded this out of our own money. We have a few on our side. We have some business owners who are going to pay the tax. We have some business owners who aren't going to pay the tax, and actually felt really strongly like that wasn't fair. And so they've put in to help us, shut this down. On the yes side, they have publicly committed that they are going to spend, as much as $2 million in the next 50 some days to try to convince you that a sales tax on healthcare is the right thing to do, because otherwise 350,000 people will die on January 24th. I mean, it's just not going to happen. How are they being funded? Where does that $2 million come from? It comes from our healthcare dollars. It comes from Medicaid, for-profit Medicaid PACs that have washed money into, political campaign PACs. And so, there was a $25,000 donation to the yes side from Greater Oregon Behavioral Health. They are a Medicaid accepting, organization that is, all their money is largely government dollars, basically.
Yeah, it seems like
it. And they're a nonprofit. You can't see my air quotes, but they're a nonprofit. And, who puts $25,000 of our Medicaid money into politics instead of putting it into the people in rural Oregon who are struggling right now to even keep mental health providers in their communities, but they can afford $25,000 for politics. I just think that's disgusting. We really need reform around that. Mitch Greenlick, who's the Democratic chair of the Healthcare Committee, he actually had a bill that said would ask voters to say no to, or say yes to ban campaign finance where these organizations that are getting our tax dollars then turn around and use them to politic. And his own party shut him down. And I would have absolutely voted for that bill. And so we need, not just reform of the state agency and reform of our Medicaid budgets. We need reform on that campaign finance side as well, so that, these nonprofits and these for-profit Medicaid organizations can't put millions of dollars into politics. I mean, I think it's important that folks know that the people who voted yes, the 56 lawmakers and the governor who voted yes and signed the bill into law, collectively have received nearly $2.8 million in campaign contributions from Medicaid organizations. Do voters really think that we were going to get any kind of alternative plan when you've got 6 power PACs putting $2.8 million into politicians to get them to vote yes on the bill that they crafted in a back room? Never. That's not going to happen. And so, we are being funded by people who say, I can't give you more than $5 because we're broke. Our premiums are $1,200 a month. So we have lots of just everyday Oregonians who've, gone online and made a donation at our stophealthcaretaxes.com website. And we're grateful for that. But largely we have, personally self-funded this with friends, family, and, companies that we know that really do care about Medicaid and want to see this funded in a more fair manner.
Great. What do you want to... What can I do to help you and the listeners besides donation? Is do Facebook and Twitter, is that a large help for you to help get the word out to vote no?
It is. So we are on Facebook. That's where the largest part of our kind of daily conversation about posting up news articles. And today we posted out one of our voters pamphlets. We're going to start posting our no voters pamphlets from the people who authored them. And like the page, share the comments that the commentary that you see on there with your friends. Go to the Oregonian website, the newspaper's website, and just type in Measure 101 or Medicaid or House Bill 2391, and go read some of the archived articles that they've written all summer. Read the editorial that from the Oregonian that says that college students and our K-12 budget should not bear the burden for this tax. As of today, we have 2 newspapers that have come out and begun the endorsement process of saying, are they going to be on the yes or no side? And the first 2 papers in the state to come out with no endorsements and supporting us. Ben Bulletin strongly said no on 101. Baker Herald today just came out with a no on 101. And so we expect that, the editorial boards will do this and come along with us, because we're bringing real solutions. This is not like Republicans in Congress and, we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare and, and then there's no replacement. We actually have solutions. And so, I feel like that makes this whole thing a little more credible. But a free thing you can do, write a letter to your editor. If you're paying crazy train costs for health insurance this year, if your employer's coming to you saying, I can't afford to give you health care next year, you know what? Vote no, but then write a little letter to the editor and tell your neighbors why you're voting no. I mean, those are all very free things that you can do from a very grassroots perspective to help us kind of beat this back. Because ultimately, we're not going to spend $2 million on a campaign in the next 50 days. When 1/5 of our economy is healthcare, and you've got special interests like the head of the Hospital Association who takes home $1.2 million of a paycheck. When you have contracts, lobbyists with $300,000 a year contracts, when you see our for-profit Medicaid organizations sell for $130 million, they love the status quo. The status quo lines their checkbooks. And so it's tough to go up against this industry. It's tough for Representative Hayden, who's also a medical professional, to go up against his own colleagues. But, for us, it was worth it. And the 90,000 people who took the time this summer to sign a petition, they were awesome. And they, and so, yeah, I'd rather have an army of people who can write me a $3 check than, some of those folks who are writing those bigger checks, because at the end of the day, we all get one ballot, and on election day, we're all equal.
Yes, and that's all that matters. Well, I'm going to tweet out, I'm going to share on Facebook all of the websites, the social media handles, and encourage all the local Oregonians that I know a ton of them, and I can feel in my heart that this is the right thing to do, and that they feel the same way, because people are sick and tired of tax. Like you said earlier, is the taxpayer being an ATM. We're not an ATM, and we're sick and tired of it. So I look forward to hopefully bringing you on again before the election, and just getting out at our grassroots and promoting No on 101.
Well, the last thing I just share is, Oregonians just sent a really strong message last November when nearly 60% of Oregonians said no on Measure 97. Go back and, compare the voters' pamphlets. The same exact people who were, yes for a $6 billion tax increase that Oregonians said no way are the same exact people who have filled the voters' pamphlet statement once again. It's just like they almost, rinsed and washed them off and put them back up there again, with the same scare tactic messages. I mean, this is a group of Oregonians who will stop at nothing to tax the hell out of us. And enough is enough, right? And voters just told you no. I'm hoping voters stand up and tell them no again. We will find a way to fund Medicaid that works and to hold that agency accountable. So I really appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming onto the program. You're listening to Common Sense Radio on the Lanterns Radio Network.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz. For great radio, get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
every rising of the sun, my purpose was to be thankful to be alive. I was even more thankful for the blessings that came with this life, specifically Virdis, my wife. But that came to an end when Aklavane and her minions violently took her away from me. So my new purpose in this life is to gather all the pieces of the Stonesheart so I can defeat Aklavane and get back my bride. Join me as I travel to new worlds, making new friends and avoiding old enemies. Read more about my story in the first 2 books of the Stonesheart series, which are now available on Amazon.com in Kindle format. The first book is The Quest for Savitvarda, and that is followed by The Heart of Pagaila. Stonesheart is more than a fantasy and a sci-fi quest. It's me fighting to get back my precious wife, despite the overwhelming odds against me. Stonesheart. Join, explore, and believe.
Hi, we're the Bells of Liberty. You can listen to us on Lanterns Radio Network.
New shows air every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern.
You can find us on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, and iHeartRadio, and on Twitter at Bells of Liberty. See you then.
Hi, it's Blake Johnson, and you can listen to my show, The Blake Johnson Program, every Monday evening at 9/8 Central on lanterns.buzz. Here, I'll delve into the news of the day and anything related to politics, movies, music, faith, and more. Nothing is off limits. This is our meeting ground for conservatives, libertarians, Christians, all liberty lovers. The Blake Johnson Program, every Monday evening at 9/8 Central, only on lanterns.buzz.
Hey everybody, I'm Matt Holloway, host of the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network from Phoenix, Arizona. And you can catch our show every week live at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern. For those of you who live in Central Time, I don't know what that is because I don't feel like doing math. No, I'm kidding. It's 6 p.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, every Sunday here on the Lanterns Media Network, where we hold the line against the night and lift up our light to shine it into the darkness. Don't miss it. Again, that's the HoloNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network.
Hello, America. Michael Murphy, Voice of Reason here. I hope you'll join me Thursday evenings live at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. See you there.
Hey, everybody. This is Dylan and Steven with Defenders of American Exceptionalism on the Lanterns Radio Network.
AJ decided to send us a message the other day and tell us that we needed to do his job.
By his job, you mean cut this little promo?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here it is. You can find our show live Saturday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, iHeartRadio, you name it.
Pretty much anywhere you
can find it. You can also find us on Facebook, Defenders of American Exceptionalism,
Twitter, DOAE Show,
and at patreon.com/DOAE Show. I think that pretty much sums it up.
I think so.
I think we're done here.
Maybe.
Could be here.
All right.
Goodbye.